Our next speaker is Medhnaa Saran. Medhnaa is also from the US and is a high school student in Virginia who founded the Touch of Life Foundation in 2016 to organize drives for books, clothes, and funds while also engaging their local elected officials on the issue of child labor. She has since engaged with the 100 Million campaign to amplify youth voices and continue her activism. Welcome, Medhnaa.
Hello. Hello everyone. My name is Medhnaa Saran, and I'm speaking from the United States as an activist against human trafficking and forced labor. I am 16 years old and I live in Virginia, where most of us are fortunate enough to have a proper education, have sufficient food, and have the freedom to be a kid. However, this is not the case for thousands of victims of human trafficking and child labor. When I was 7 years old, my family and I visited the Baal ashram in India, founded by Mr. Kailashsatyarthi. But to our dismay, we saw children who were forced to work, and many of the children were malnourished, had numerous scars, and looked like they were beaten. I asked my parents why these children had so many scars and why some didn't want to play. They told me in the most age-appropriate way. These children were forced to work against their will, and if they did not listen, they would get beaten. At that moment, I realized that everyone did not have the same freedom as I had, and I immediately wanted to make a change. One of my biggest inspirations was a young boy who I met at the Baal ashram, and he was a victim of bonded labor who miraculously escaped and was rescued by BBA. He grew up in the Baal ashram and prospered. Amarlal is now a successful lawyer who fights for children's rights. His success story shows us that every child has the right to become what they want and what they dream about. After coming back to the United States when I was 8 years old, my brother and I contacted our school administration and organized our first bake sale and raised over $2,000 US, and all of the proceeds went to the rescue victims of forced labor. Eventually, in 2016, my brother Kushan and I created our nonprofit, the Touch of Life Foundation, to advocate and to draw attention to the global issues of forced labor of children and trafficking, and where children are exploited and trafficked against their will, often with false promises to work somewhere else. Since 2016, we have raised over $20,000 US, collected over 1,000 pieces of clothing that went to the rescued victims, and advocated to lawmakers to support certain bills and laws. Furthermore, we created multiple school clubs around the US and held virtual volunteer sessions to educate and advocate against trafficking. However, I have set up this foundation to try and do what I can, but this is still not enough to tackle the issues, and that's why I'm asking the UN missionaries to make good on their promise. We need the EU and the governments of the G7 to enforce that to enforce the fact that companies and their supply chains are not utilizing trafficked children that have been forced into labor. We need governments to commit to trying to make this change and amending laws to reflect that. My heartfelt desire is that these children will be allowed to be children who are free to grow up and follow their dreams. It is time for developed countries to do something about human trafficking. Incidents of violence and abuse have steeply risen amid the COVID lockdown, and children are not receiving the protection they need from the governments. And we need to make sure these protections are funded. I hope you all are inspired to make a change in your community because every child deserves the basic right of freedom. Thank you so much for listening to me today.
Thank you so much, Medhnaa, for your powerful remarks. Our next speaker